Awesome. Yeah, feel free to come on video, you guys. You know, say hello in the chat. Little spiel on who you guys are, what you do, what customers you service. We'll be getting started here a couple minutes after the hour. So thanks again, everybody, for jumping on, and we'll get started here shortly. Lots of changes in FY26, so we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about. You know, at any point in time you guys have any questions, let us know. We're ready to go. All right, Alan's out of USA, Hampton, Virginia. Very cool. I'm based out of Southern California myself, so we're battling the heat right now. Raleigh, North Carolina. Very nice. Thanks for joining me, Stephen. It was always fun, you know. We bring had a near miss of hurricane. Oh my goodness. Take care of yourself. I heard it's vicious. Man. And now you get to learn Microsoft updates. How fun. Here. Just a reminder again for anybody who recently joined, we'll be getting started here in a couple minutes. Let everybody hop on. If you're listening on LinkedIn, we've got some great content coming to you here just very shortly, and very excited. So thanks again for hopping on. If you're here in the Teams environment, feel free to say hello, let us know what you're doing here and what you're excited to learn about. If you have any specific questions as well, please drop them in the chat. We'll build them into the presentation. We're going to be going over all things funding, incentives. We'll be talking a little bit about AI, specifically agents, is what I'm going to start the conversation on here. So, a lot of stuff.
The Microsoft ecosystem is constantly evolving, and for many partners, it's overwhelming to keep up. Constant program updates, intricate incentive structures, and ever-changing priorities leave partners struggling to stay ahead. Without a clear roadmap, critical opportunities are missed. These challenges don't just cost time, they cost revenue. Working with Microsoft doesn't have to be this difficult. With the right support, you can cut through the complexity, take control of your strategy, and unlock measurable growth. We help partners simplify their path to success by providing the guidance and resources needed to fully maximize their Microsoft relationship. Ready to learn more?
All right. right. Well, welcome everybody here to the Voice of the Microsoft Partner. I am in control today along with the rest of the Alliance team here, David and Josh from the business development team. We have taken over the VOMP today. We got a special request. There has been a tremendous amount of changes here for FY26. Things are evolving, and so we felt it would make a lot of sense. We're in the game every single day, right? We're learning about what's changing. We're talking to partners, and we're going through these different, changes. And so we're very excited today to get into some of these different details. You go to the next slide real quick, Dave. I'll just do a quick intro of the agenda. Like I mentioned, myself and Dave from the Alliance team are going to be here leading part of this conversation. And we'll also have Josh from our sales team talk a little bit about the funding opportunities and how some of those things are going to impact how you go to market as well. Dave and I are going to be focusing on the changes both from an incentive standpoint, managing your relationship with Microsoft, but I'll also be getting into some of those AI topics. Specifically, which we're going to get to here in just a second, I'm going to be talking about agents. Agents are the new meta. I told Rio, I said, I don't know if that's a Gen X term. Hopefully everybody knows what I mean by that. It's the new wave. Everybody has been talking about them nonstop. I actually, before I get into this whole spiel, I've got a question for everybody. We've got those different topics. I'm curious, Rio, if you go ahead and send out this poll. What are you guys most frustrated about? Is it how the incentives are changing? Is it about how these engagements and these funding opportunities are changing? Is it about the solution partner designation specialization updates? Or is it maybe around Microsoft's AI focus? A lot of these different things are very dynamic. They change on a dime. And so I know it can be a little difficult to stay on top of what the changes look like. We wanted to send this poll out just to kind of level set and understand what you guys are most interested in getting to know about. And so far, it looks like the SPD and incentive changes are leading here. So Dave, definitely going to be important for you to dig into that as much as possible.
We got
again that the chat here is where you'll be able to go ahead and find this poll. But before we get there, you got to listen to me first. So we'll go ahead and get into agents here. Why did we want to talk about this in the first place? If you listen to MCAP Start for Partners, if you listen to any of the monthly calls where Microsoft talks about some of the new focuses for the new year, you probably heard every single person on the call talk about this. I mean, I listened through probably 10 plus hours. And almost every single speaker mentioned the word agent, okay? Now, where is this coming from? I'm going to put this in the chat window just to give you guys a little bit of context. You probably have heard this term, the frontier firm. Microsoft's been talking quite a bit about, okay? In their mind, AI is the next wave of technology services. It's the biggest opportunity in their mind. They've actually quantified it. They said that when looking through the lens, agents along with security are the two potential largest places for growth for partners, according to what they see in FY26. And so if you look at the snip I sent in the chat window, you'll notice that they want to put partners along this journey in 3 different stages. Okay, the first stage is around a human with an assistant. And if you start thinking about what has Microsoft done, that was the FY25 focus. That was Copilot chat, right? Getting people comfortable and understanding how to work with a large language model. But the time has come to move on to stage 2. And that's why, in my mind, FY26 is all about agents. It's human-led agents. No longer is it an assistant that can help you finish tasks more quickly. It's about actually having that assistant do that task themselves, building in the knowledge into that assistant so that it can automate that entire process. And if you look at stage 3, some of us here might be slightly concerned because it's human-led, agent-controlled processes where now we're actually replacing the need for people on the team, right? We're going from learning how to work with an AI to telling the AI how to work. to having the AI actually be a dedicated resource inside of the organization. That is the flow that Microsoft is looking towards. And so this year, we're geared on agents. So we go to the next slide, Dave, real quick, for anybody who maybe you haven't heard of this term. What is an agent? You can see on the screen, right? It's an AI assistant to help optimize business processes. That's the key. Processes is what agents are built and created to solve, right? Instead of you having to be actively working and doing this, you can tell the AI how to get this done. And you see it's a connection between your applications, potentially your co-pilot foundational understanding of the business. Oftentimes, there's definitely going to be the Power Platform in the form of either a Power App or an Automate flow that's going to be built into that. And then also, you're going to have data. That's going to be the core, most important resource that this agent is going to be working from. And so instead of your 365 repository of data, that's probably going to be a critical piece where you're going to get a lot of information to help it accomplish that task. Before I get to the next piece, Alan's asking, what's the reseller margin? There's not necessarily any difference for a reseller in terms of margin here. Oftentimes, when you're talking about agents, you're talking about a tool that's going to consume Azure resources. And so whatever your Azure margin is, that's what you're looking at. However, these are all hero products for Microsoft. And so oftentimes there's additional accelerators, which I'm sure Dave will get into a little bit later today, that will make it more lucrative for partners to actually go through that process. So hopefully that answers that question, Alan. If you have something else, please let me know. So this is all very, it's just a thought until you actually make it a reality. If you go to the next slide real quick, Dave, what are some potential examples here that you can be thinking about? Right, they talk about from a simple agent to an advanced agent, when we're talking something that's just recall to something that's actually actively completing a process, right? So maybe it's just an IT help desk agent where somebody's got a question, it searches through the information that's got access to, and then it spits out an answer for you. Or maybe it's as complex as a customer support rep, where somebody brings in a question, it can evaluate it, it can understand it, give an answer, send it to the correct resource. A lead gen agent, right? A management agent. There's a lot of different examples here. I just want to give you something to kind of think about. How might I start implementing this inside of my business? And I always think, it's kind of side note, it's always better to do it yourself and understand it in order for you to be able to speak to it with your customers. Michael, yes, absolutely. We'll send this to you, no problem. Oftentimes, and I know partners over the last year, there's been a lot of different changes, right? You sometimes need to get your own personal experience. You need to get your own feet wet to really understand the situation that the customer is experiencing to help them answer some of these different questions. I think I would very much encourage everybody that's on the call today. There are research agents that Microsoft has recently released that I'm sure are awesome. Okay, if you've ever worked with ChatGPT, which is what it's built off of, I've got the premium license and I've got the deep research functionality. Blows my mind every single time I use it. I mean, the people who need to be worried are the McKinsey consultants, because you give it, these parameters to look for something, it goes ahead and actually does the deep research, and within 20 minutes, you get a report, 20-page report that would have taken somebody, a few days to put together. It's phenomenal stuff. And so I would encourage you guys, go test it out. They've got a lot of these things built out 80% of the way for you guys to go and then customize for your customers. So you take what's built, very similar to a Power Automate template or a Power App template. You take it, you customize it, you align it with a specific industry need, and then all of a sudden you're an AI frontier partner, right? That's where we need to get to. So if you go to the next slide real quick, Dave, you'll notice, how do these things really come together? You've got a knowledge base, you've got a logic that you build into that agent. You then have it do specific actions inside of your services or your applications for customers, and then you implement channels for it to be able to communicate with end users. That is how you're building this agent. This is available in Copilot Studio end to end for you to build it from scratch or to build it from an existing template for your customers. But I'll tell you, I work with partners large and small. Some partners have an AI practice that is very specific, and it makes a ton of sense, right? Because AI, like a lot of these other tools, is not necessarily out of the box, okay? But very importantly, how do you scale something that's not out of the box? If everything that you're doing is custom built, you're going to move a lot slower, right? It doesn't mean you can't have that service available, but I would encourage you guys to think about how can we build something that solves a very specific niche problem so that I can scale this out to different organizations that have a very similar issue much more quickly, right? If I've got an agent for the legal space that takes a look at existing cases that are very similar to the one I'm working on, it builds a report and streamlines it for me, and I'm basically replacing the work of a paralegal for these different lawyers. All of a sudden, you can customize that a bit towards the end, but the actual problem it's solving is very scalable across the entire legal space. So I think that's kind of how you guys want to think about it. And if you go to the next couple slides here, Dave, Microsoft talks about what the partner opportunity looks like, right? So you'll see here, Microsoft wants you guys to go beyond just the actual agent. If you go to the next slide, Dave, they kind of see this as Copilot chat and Copilot are getting people comfortable. Again, you saw at stage one, using some of these AI services, and then you build AI agents together to help them really build AI into what they do as a business. However, they don't want you to just sell those solutions. If you go to the next slide, they want you to build a service on top of those solutions, right? Microsoft, again, they have the engine where you can go build some of these services from scratch or use a template to get the majority of the way there. But what they don't have is the resources you guys have on staff to speak that vision to your customers, right? The reason they work with a partner channel in the first place is because you guys can extend their capabilities that much further, that much more quickly. And so Microsoft sees this as the new business line, right? Long time ago, all of a sudden we went from Microsoft Word 2005 to Microsoft 365. Then, we went from on-premises to Azure in the cloud. We're now going from AI on your phone to AI built in with managed services from a partner. So they don't want you to just be able to create the solution for your customer. They want you to actually go through the process of building a managed services practice specific to AI. That's where they see the vision for partners here over the next year. And so I'd encourage you guys to start having some of these conversations. If this is not something that's on your timeline and you want to stay, lockstep with Microsoft, I mean, this has to be something that you guys are considering. They give some examples here, some ideas. If we go to the next slide, as like a way to start breaking in is maybe a get started offer with an agent. It's a fixed cost and it comes with testing, implementation, user adoption with the actual agent development. And then as well as some of these assessments and managed services that are going to be built into this. Okay, they want you to just this whole, it's, I think if you go to the next slide, Dave, I think they even put a price to it or something. Maybe they said like maybe $8,000 fee, for the actual entire process. You'll see they're going to bake in managed services. Again, I'm going to reemphasize that as a core component of what you guys do. Technical support, security management, performance monitoring, optimization. Because again, this is going to change very, very quickly. What's the focus today is probably not going to be the focus in 6 to 12 months. And so part of this is going to be always giving your customers the latest and greatest and what's possible and what's out there. And so, again, if there's anything I can say, if you just go to the last slide real quick, Dave, just go a couple here. Microsoft is making this a core component of FY26. They did not stop talking about this on every presentation. I cannot emphasize that enough. If you guys aren't doing this today, I would highly suggest you guys think through how you can start building towards this. Or the other option is go find another partner that's already there, right? Somebody who's got the skills and the capabilities. If you don't think you're going to be able to develop that in-house, look to somebody who's already built that out that can help you basically white label those services for your customers. Because here's the reality. The customer's going to be talking about this internally constantly. I mean, think about how many ads you're getting on AI. I mean, it's everywhere, right? And so it's a natural part of the conversation. And so if you're not bringing this to the table, somebody else will. And so you need to find a way to build this into what you're offering the market, because otherwise, again, somebody's going to capture that business from you. So that's my long spiel on agents. It's a really cool topic. There's a lot of different things going on here. And if it's something that you're highly interested in looking to develop, guess what? There are some funding opportunities out there for you to actually start driving that business home. So with that said, I'm going to bring in my colleague here, Josh, from the business development team, and he's going to be talking about some of the top 5 changes here that have come from FY25 to FY26 in terms of MCI funding here. So Josh, pass it over to you, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, Andre. So I'm going to put a poll question in the chat. Reba, go ahead. How many of you, I am curious, are leveraging funding today? Or previous to have in the past, maybe don't understand it, would like to have a little bit more about it, but are currently using it today for all the engagements that you're currently doing. In previous experience, before I get into it, I've asked this question to many partners, and most partners would like to do it, would like to engage into it, but the thing that I see the most is they don't want to read the handbook and completely understand, because of the expertise you got to have and what goes with what when it comes to these different funding programs. So I'll go into a more diverse of the changes that are coming up for 2026, and I hope to help everyone on this call to provide more insight. And for those who would like a more beneficial summary report after the call, feel free to reach out to me via email or my Calendly link. So we can go to the next slide here. So I'm going to keep these top 5 changes on very high level with everyone. So I want to be able to, make sure that everybody understands what's changed, what that looks like, how does that impact your funding and the requirements that you need. So going into the first slide at a high level, back in May, of course, before we get to July, the incentives were spread for when it comes to Azure incentives and priorities reinforced and structured refresh. In May, it was more focused on Azure incentives were spread across several different buckets: migrate and modernize, innovate, ISV success, advance, and cloud accelerating factor. And what Microsoft decided to change in this, which should really impact more partners, is they consolidated it down all to what they call the Azure Accelerate program, meaning now the deals can be like migrate and modernize SAP, VMware, data AI, apps, agents, and developers are all the key focuses of Microsoft, but also now consolidated, making it much easier for the client. And for those who don't know and understand what the Azure Accelerate is at a high level, again, it's more of an Excel or a more consolidated process focused on, again, VMware data platform, etc. But what that means for you is the most important. It's a more simplified structure, clear priorities, funding and support, predictable payouts, and definitely, more higher accountability for partners to meet these requirements. So they're trying to make it easier for you from a back-end perspective versus have it being scattered through multiple different avenues. So the key takeaway from that is, do fewer things, but do bigger and better. That's Microsoft's quote unquote perspective and maximizing those fundings. So from a rebate perspective, rebates are not going to change. The only thing in short that's going to change is the promotional offers. That being said, is now that Microsoft's released M365 E3, E5, that you can get a 3-year term subscription and a 10% promotional discount, and things like Copilot 365, they can get those 15% discount for those that want to extend that.
And Josh, if I could just add in a little bit here, I want to emphasize they tested out last quarter of last year the SMB funding path for Azure opportunities. And this has been absolutely made a priority here for all of FY26. So if you think, there's no way for me to get there because I can't get an Azure specialization, if you're driving under $1 million in Azure consumption and you get that solution designation, well, guess what? All of a sudden, I do have access, in fact, to Azure funding for any of these different opportunities. On top of that, if you never tried out the Accelerate Factory, I encourage you guys to. You're getting free technical resources from Microsoft. Why not give it a shot? So I just want to emphasize that some really cool things that they've made, they put it in stone here for this new year. So sorry, back to you, Josh.
Awesome. So going to the next slide, modern work incentives from Copilots to Copilot plus Power. The easiest way to explain this to you, it used to be back in 2024, it was solely just focused on Copilot because Copilot was new. Everybody was trying to get an understanding of how AI works. And a lot of partners, what they were doing in the past is they were, doing value workshops, small proof of concepts, of course, deployment accelerators, etc. So what Microsoft has changed moving forward is they now want you to focus on the bigger picture here. And the bigger picture, of course, is adding Copilot into Power Envisioning and POC and deployment accelerators. So it's not just taking Copilot per se to focus on Teams, the task in Excel, focusing on things as of what it can do in your Outlook, but driving the bigger picture, meaning they want to see the end-to-end user automation and AI-driven workflows, the overall business goal objective for your clients moving forward. So if you're looking from an earnings perspective to grow that revenue, to grow that avenue, and get more Microsoft recognition, then I would definitely want to bundle Copilot with a Power Platform device moving forward. So what that means pretty much into practice is showing leaders how Copilot answers questions and how Power Automate can trigger workflows based on those answers. So key takeaway here is Copilot will help users. Power Platform helps the organized scale and tailor AI to their unique business. Together, it delivers the end-to-end AI plus automation solutions, not just standalone solutions. So from a rebate perspective, the rebates will remain the same, roughly between that 12 to 15%. But from a funding perspective, if you're wanting more increased funding flows, you need to focus on bundling the two together. And Microsoft will grant recognition to that.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll also say on that too, Josh, this is the one program here where there's a high bar here. We need to have a modern work specialization. We need to be in the Jumpstart program and have that ready tier. So it is going to be exclusive for a lot of partners. I just want to make that clear. But if you're able to get there, there is going to be a lot of opportunity available to you. And Microsoft is trying to position it so that you're not just driving Copilot, you're driving Copilot with the Power Platform and building, again, some of these agentic solutions for your customers. So, Josh, back to you, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, Andres. And happy to have that discussion because today we're just going over the eggshell, but obviously there's more a little bit to it. And we're happy to help you, walk through what that process looks like. So going to the next slide here, security incentives. This is always the fun one. Microsoft has definitely made changes to security. So it used to be based on the perspective of deploying certain technical execution services like threat protection deployments, data security rollouts, Sentinel migrate and modernize security usage growth. Microsoft now wants you to do the more before perspective, which they are happy to fund as long as you meet those compliances. And what I mean by that is saying, hey, you're on a CrowdStrike solution or you're on this firewall solution. Let's migrate you over to Sentinel or Microsoft Defender or a better MFA. They want you to develop workshops or assessments ahead of time now, which is more developed around the business outcomes and goals focused on that specific business, saying, hey, these are the things that you could use it for. These are the things that we can help you with. And generally educating the customer on the solution first versus just deploying the solution and teaching them along the way. So Microsoft's motto from this is not just doing the work, but building the intent behind it. So putting that all into a summary it's going to shift the sales motion. They want you to invest more into your consultative skills and knowledge around security, educating the client pre and before ahead of time. And it also unlocks more funding to you. And I'm happy to have that conversation as well next week with any of you who have more questions around that, because I feel like security is important in today's society. And getting educated on the projects, maybe focusing on things such as workshops or bundle assessments could be a good play for you. because it opens opportunities for clients to get more educated before going into the next focus strategy, which is obviously deployment. So happy
And
to
you
help.
know, sorry, Josh, I keep jumping in. I just can't help myself.
Yeah, no worries.
The security one is very exciting. I've told all of my partners about this one because previously, historically, you've needed a specialization in order to get access to any of these dollars. And what they did this year is they actually opened it up to designation partners as well. So if you have a solution designation in security, which typically you're going to be able to get to if you add some additional certifications, if you already have the modern work, you're going to be in a position where you can run briefings, events on some of these different topics. And you can also then, from that event, drive those consumers to workshops that you'll also get funded. And then if you have a specialization, you'll be able to get some additional funding if you sell a certain amount of licenses as well. So they've really opened up the dollars that have come available for this track. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they know when AI becomes a core component of what you're trying to do, security needs to be a foundational element to everything. And so wanted to make that clear. And with that, Josh, I'll pass it back over to you, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, Andres. Going to the next slide, which is more of business applications. Microsoft has made some changes to this. So at a high level, what's changed is incentives used to be tied to product-centric engagements. That's such as, tailored demos, needs for assessments, and low-code accelerators. What they pivoted to now is incentive strategy-led engagements. So more of the ERP, CRM envisioning workshops and Business Central immersion briefings. So what that means is at a high level, Microsoft is moving away from showing product features such as demos and towards helping customers imagine business outcomes. So the key word I said earlier, envisioning. So it's not about how Dynamics and what it can do for you, but it's here how Dynamics can help you, plus adding the Power Platform to transform your business and overall objectives of your goals. So again, from a perspective of a funding perspective, how this will impact you is they're not wanting you to, focus more on the demos, but now they're wanting you to focus on the business transformation. So again, when it comes to that perspective for funding opportunities, there's a lot more to it, but they're going to want you to invest now into more pre-sales consultants, envisioning playbooks and industry use cases as an example from a high level takeaway standpoint. And I will, after this call, for anybody who wants a little bit more knowledge on that, I created a summary chart of what's included, what's not included, what's being removed, and what's not being removed and now eligible moving forward. So going to the next slide. So the number 5 is partner performance and the measures being introduced. Kind of like what I reiterated a little bit earlier, and everybody was guilty of this, and of course it made sense at the time. Incentives were based on quantity, not on quality. So it was more partners. How do I plug and play for this incentive? How do I get rewarded for this engagement, and doing it repetitively? Kind of like I said when we had the co-op workshops, there was an uncapped number back in 2024. So it was more plug and play. Hey, let's keep re-engaging and doing the co-pilot event, et cetera, et cetera. So what they're wanting to do moving forward, what change? Incentives were based on activity completion and not more with no quality threshold. So moving forward, now they introduce performance and compliancy measurements, so such as cloud endpoints and visioning. And of course, now they're going to, some of these opportunities put claim limits. So before it was based on quantity. Now it's based on quality, but not also quality, but it's now based on delivered value and outcome. So from a partner perspective, what that means to you is no more volume play. They're expecting more higher standards. They're expecting more accountability, and they turned it winners versus losers. So higher quality partners earn more in the long run, and they stay more eligible. Volume only partners will receive reduced incentive earnings, but the claim and compete will no longer work. So from a key high level takeaway, it's more now based on the quality of effort you're putting into your pre-sales consulting, developing the workshops, developing the outcomes, educating the client. So from the beginning, mid, and end user phase is what they're going to measure off of moving forward. So the key takeaways, kind of like I reiterated earlier, Azure is now being consolidated, so there's a partner performed measurement tool in place called the Azure Accelerator. Security is not going to be just based on deployment. Let's switch you and migrate you to this. They want you to obviously educate the clients moving ahead, moving forward, maybe, doing an assessment or a workshop, which is Microsoft funded. Happy to get you the qualifications to that. Modern work is evolving, so they've gotten comfortable again. Copilot is a great tool to use, but now they want you to use Copilot with Power Platform. They want you to use a more of a bundle, envisioning the outcome of a business versus just using it for its everyday tool needs, such as Outlook, Teams, Word documents, etc., and the other Teams functions. And then, of course, in the Biz app is shifting. So again, it's more from a business perspective of not just tailored demos, but developing the business outcome for the client, using Dynamics not only as a use case, but also envisioning the idea of a Power Platform device to reach and achieve the ultimate goal. So what they're trying to say is they're wanting to hold partners more accountable, not just on what the quantity and volume of what they can do, but on the quality and performance services that they can offer their clients.
Stuff.
Cool.
All right.
And I'll
Excellent.
put my calendar link in the chat for anybody who wants to maybe go into a further engagement, or as well as my email. So I can send you a summary of just kind of reiterating everything that I said today. So cool.
Excellent. Thank you, Josh. All right, everybody, party people, it's my turn. I'm gonna take the mic over for a couple of minutes here. We're gonna roll through a few slides. The first thing I want to tackle today is taking a look at some of the new requirements and differences between being a direct bill or an indirect reseller. All right, there's some major changes here, especially if you are direct. And so let's go ahead and get into this. The bar has raised for direct bill partners, and the bar itself is more attainable now if you are indirect. Let's talk about direct, though, for a second. Let's focus here. For this current fiscal, if you are direct, you need a SBD specific to the solution area in 1 million. The previous threshold was 300,000 in the trailing 12 months in terms of revenue. There's no more gold, silver competency. It's gone. With the raised bar, if you've been operating direct, this is a pivotal time to take a look at your business and reevaluate whether or not you should stay direct, right? Are you going to be able to stay in compliance? Is attaining the SPDs that you do most of your business in something that is easily within reach? Or is this going to take a longer amount of time and we're going to miss out on a boatload of money in the meantime, right? So we'd be happy to speak with anyone that's in that bucket specifically and, just kind of talk one-on-one to give some more guidance here. As it relates to indirect, I mentioned the bar is a little bit more attainable. Here's what I mean by that. Beforehand, to earn incentives in a solution area, you needed an SPD. But with the new changes for FY26, you need 25 points, which technically speaking could just be certification points specific to the solution area incentive, and 25,000 trailing 12 months. Now, this is evaluated every month, right? It's dynamic. It's looked at every month, but it includes the last 5. Meaning, let's say this month, you're at 25 points. You're an indirect, you're at 25 in modern work. Let's say for whatever reason, next month, you drop down to, call it 10 points. You're still going to earn incentives next month because Microsoft takes a look at the current month along with the trailing 5. And you just have to be eligible one time within that current and the trailing 5 to earn incentives. Just be within that eligibility window. Now, there are a lot of indirect partners who, we can probably safely assume are going to see an increase year over year in incentives because of this new bar, right? It's been lowered. It's more attainable. But I also want to point out that the 25 point, the 25,000 threshold, this only has to do with incentives. This has nothing to do with IURs, right? Which is where a lot of the benefits come from when it comes to getting an SPD. right? Especially modern work. When you look at the amount of E5 licenses you get, it's substantial. What do we say it is, Andres? The rough value on that whole package? It's something like
Microsoft
$100,000,
markets it as over 100,000 in
yeah.
value.
It's crazy, right? So, I point out that, yeah, we've got a 25-point threshold. That's all fine and dandy, but that shouldn't be where, as an indirect reseller, we should cap our goal at, right? We always want to be moving forward towards an SPD, towards a specialization, because without either of those things, all of the funding opportunities that Josh was talking about, we're not going to have access to, right?
On top of that, specific to Azure, right? We talked about getting access to funding for Azure. And if you leverage the Cloud Accelerate Factor, you're a growing business.
Oof.
How much money are you saving there by not having to spend money on additional technical resource? I mean, they're not cheap. So, there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of reasons in some cases. So, but in the short term, the good news is if you're indirect, you're probably going to see a little bit more money potentially than you have in previous years. Now, you also heard Josh mention some of these categories that you're seeing here on the screen in terms of rebates. And as both Josh and Andres already mentioned, Microsoft is doubling down on security and AI as being the highest funded place, right? Security offers up to 10.75% accelerators, and AI business process carries the richest incentive, right around 12%. Cloud incentives, a little bit lower at 3%. The big takeaway is this: Microsoft doesn't just want net new. Okay, they want extension and expansion within your current customer base. So on this next slide, we're going to take a quick look at an example with expansion of Business Premium and how payouts compare from last year to this year. So here's an example expansion of what you could earn, right? Taking a look, we see growth from 100 seats of Business Premium to 200. That's going to give us a core of 1584, an accelerator at 1267, and growth of 1584. You'd earn right around 4,400 in CSP incentives. And if we compare that to last fiscal, we're looking at a 20% bump comparatively. Let's take a look at one more example here. Let's say that you renew a customer at 2,000 seats, but you upsell them from ME3 to ME5. You can see the totals there comes out to about 143,000 in incentives, which same scenario last year comparatively, this is a 27% increase, a 27% bump.
If you could go back real quick, Dave, I want to just point something out real quick. Take a look at those numbers between core, strategic, and growth. Oftentimes we're just thinking, I want to sell these licenses so I can get that core incentive and I can add that 3% to my bottom line. But it might be a good idea to start thinking about, man, maybe it's not just what I'm selling. It's about how I'm selling it and positioning that with the customer. You're getting almost 2 times as much of the core for selling the business, in this case, the E5 licensing specifically, because that's a focus area for Microsoft, right? Those E5 and business premium SKUs, they come with a tremendous amount of strategic accelerators behind them. So if you've got anybody who's on E3 looking to potentially upsell the E5, you got anybody who's on business standard, maybe looking to upsell to business premium, like we said last time, you got 100,000 reasons, right, to see if you can make that happen, because they're incentivizing you as the partner to push the customer down that path. So I just want to emphasize that point home, Dave. Back to you.
No, it's a great call out. It's a great call out. Now we can get even more granular into the respective solution play areas here, right? So if we can take a look at some of the updated rates for M365 CSP incentives. Note that Josh mentioned that the rates, they're relatively the same. This is true, except with the growth percentage. That's a little bit different. Also take note on the right-hand side of that little chart that there are max incentive thresholds. It's unlikely that most of us are going to meet those thresholds, but also note that one of those doesn't have a threshold. That's going to be the strategic telco SKUs related to global calling. The middle portion of our slide really just kind of re-emphasizes the requirements around, whether you're direct or indirect, and that's something we also talked about kind of ad nauseum to begin with. We also have these same types of slides that you're looking at right now in the next one that I'm going to show for Dynamics and Azure as well, that also go into the percentages. For time's sake, we're not going to get into each one of those, but they're in the deck. And so if you guys would like the deck, please reach out and you will have access to view those. Now, this is a really good illustration just to show what types of scenarios are you core, strategic, and growth incentives. Strategic products is where we want to focus. And this is really evident if you take a look at the third example here. A seat expansion of a non-strategic product is still only going to grant you core incentives. Whether you upgrade them 1,000 seats, 2,000, 3,000, it's still only going to give you core if it's a non-strategic product. Also take a look at the second to last two sections here at the bottom related to COCP. That's change of channel partner. I'm sure by this point, you guys have probably heard something around the realm that any type of COCP, partner to partner transfer, it's not going to qualify for incentives. That guidance has reverted back. Okay, that is no longer the case. If anybody was worried about that,
too much of an uproar. I mean, my goodness, yeah, it was not well received. I'll tell you that much. Definitely not.
It was not well received at all. So it's welcome news. But again, these are just good examples you can see from one year to the next, and what kind of examples would fit for core, strategic, and growth. We move on to the next slide here. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Now, because Microsoft is changing the way that incentives work, there's a little bit of a different way that payouts are going to be calculated for this year. And there's one big piece that I really want to call out. So the effective date for these changes is technically October 1st. But I want to call out July through September. So last month, where we are now, all the way through September, this period is going to be initially calculated under the FY25 rules, right? So the same way that incentives were calculated in the last fiscal, for this specific quarter, that's how they're going to be calculated in the immediate future. If you take a look at that timeline, though, and you zip on over to February, this same time frame that we're talking about, that we're in right now, is going to be recalculated and paid out under the FY26 rules. Meaning, as an indirect reseller, you very well may see an additional quarter's worth of incentives money for a solution area if you did have 25 points and 25K trailing 12 months for that specific area, right? So something to look forward to. I wouldn't, don't go out and buy some big old fancy Corvette thinking you're going to get, an extra 50, 60 grand, drop it in your bucket. But just know there could be a little extra change sitting around. So with that, I'm going to throw it back to Andres.
Yeah, I think probably just to kind of bring everything home here. It's funny. One of the things I've been talking to Dave about, there hasn't really been any updates in the last 6 weeks. It's the craziest thing I've seen in a long time. Usually, like every couple of weeks, you're seeing some new things come out. They really hit heavy early. This is one of the first years I've seen where all the announcements came out first week of July. Most of the times you're waiting until, first week of September and everything comes out. So, Microsoft has a very clear laser focus on what matters to them, how they want the partner program to continue evolving. And so, I would highly suggest everybody take a look, have those conversations internally and see what makes sense for me. Where can I make some slight adjustments or pivots just so that I continue to move forward in the way that Microsoft is doing business. So lots of changes coming. Obviously, we're always here if you guys want to have a conversation. If there's any questions, we're more than happy to help you guys out. I did also want to give another shout out here. Next month, we're going to be talking about AI agents as well, how winning partners are using AI agents and going to market. So if you're more interested in learning about that topic, we'll be talking about that at length as well here in September. So got a lot of cool things here in the pipeline. We wanted to also leave a little bit of time here in case there was additional questions. And good luck hunting. There's a lot of business out there for everybody. So best of luck to everybody. Much appreciated. Feel free to connect with us if you have any additional questions. So, cool. If you have any questions here, please let us know in the chat, and we're more than happy to address them. If not, feel free to take 10 minutes back. We know everybody's got a bunch of things they're probably focused on here on a Friday. So, awesome. How do we get new clients? That's the age-old question, Alan. Everybody says cold calling is dead. Definitely harder, but I just think it's an effort thing. I'm not saying you have to go cold call. I'm just saying, regardless of whatever avenue you pick, just make sure you go all in. That would be my suggestion. Awesome. We'll stay on here for a couple more minutes in case there's any other questions, but if not, enjoy the weekend, my friends. Always a pleasure. Thanks again. Awesome. Thank you, sir. What if a partner has already achieved SPD? What if a partner has already achieved SPD for Azure? If you want to come off a mute and give me a little bit more context, thank you, Michael, for coming. What exactly mean? If you've already got the SPD, then you've already got access to the funding. You just may not be aware.
Yep.
That would be my answer, but I don't know if you mean something different than that.
Yeah, Andres.
Yeah.
So you said for Azure, if you're on the SMB path, that is something that they just recently introduced, right? So prior to that, there was just data and AI, digital app and innovation and infrastructure.
Yeah.
Now they've consolidated it to be Azure and AI.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone who's already had those solution partner designations, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm mistaken, but I don't think you can actually switch to Azure for SMB to get access to funding, right?
So yeah, SMB is very simple. It depends on how much ACR you're driving per year. If you're over $1 million, you're automatically put into the enterprise path. If you're under $1 million, then you're in the SMB path, and that's where you would get access to this program. I always crack a joke with partners when they ask me about it. I say, just like in politics, the middle class gets squeezed. So, if you're a partner that's doing more than $1 million, but you're not quite at the specialization yet, you don't really have access to much besides the factory. If you're a smaller partner and you're on the SMB path for Azure, then you would have access to a small portion of what's available to those specialized partners. So you can check this either by looking at your earnings and saying how much revenue you're driving for Azure, or you could also just go to the membership section in Partner Center, and it'll say it whether or not you're in the SMB path or the enterprise path for Azure.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good question. And Roger, you've got a question, I thought. What I need is a brief summary of lane change for market annual across ME, E, and F SKUs. So Roger, I'll tell you one of the things to keep in mind, because I know you guys work with some larger organizations as well. Supposedly, they are actually consolidating the price points for M365 across the different tiers. They're not providing any of those discounts that they previously did for some of these larger engagements. So, if you're talking about customer budgets, that's one area where you could absolutely see some significant changes. If somebody was expecting, a licensing discount because they bought 5,000 seats, might not be the case anymore. So we'll definitely make sure to get this
PowerPoint out to everybody. Just feel free to send us a message and we'll get that over to you. Awesome. All right. Well, it looks like we're good. 30-second warning. If not, I'm gonna have Reva start kicking everybody out so the recording doesn't go on for infinity over and over. Awesome. Cool beans. Oh, already ended it. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna record everyone's.